Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back. Eric Morin here. And it's interesting because I don't have Matthew on the podcast today, but I'm looking at him right now because he's actually standing in the studio. We're getting ready to do some things. He's in town for an event for the company. So you can't see him, but Matthew's over there in the corner. Life is good. We're getting ready for the holidays. Everything's kind of going well here at Tower. And today we're going to do a special episode of the Dental Wealth Podcast. I'm going to send you into the leadership retreat. So we're going to grab a clip of the leadership retreat we just did from about 2-3 weeks ago. And it was an amazing event. The reason why we do the leadership retreat is because we love to impact teams and impact practices and impact communities. And so we love to see what a business can do when it grows and it serves. But here's the catch. Most team members in a practice don't have a why. They don't even know why they're doing it. They're coming for a paycheck. They're coming for, they come in every day, they grind, and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So like 5 years ago, we started this event. And the idea of the event was to give team members a why. So they understood, because remember, they've never heard material like this. We've got speakers, literally, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in speakers. I mean, this event, we have tears, we have laughter, we have joy, we have high fives. It's an amazing team building event, but it's also an event where the team gets focused on their goals. They focus in on each individual why. They focus in on the future of the organization and how it impacts everybody. I mean, imagine your entire team walking out just completely ready to run through a wall, ready to just take on the world. I mean, I had a lady come up to me at the event and was telling me, she said, do you have any idea what this event and what you guys do at Tower Leadership, how it impacts people's lives? And she had tears running down her face, and she was just like, look, my entire life has been changed by the work of Tower Leadership. She grabbed me and she asked me this impactful question.
The little bit of what we changed, and that was last year, even before the leadership and we've got this team that is unbelievable. And so there's not enough money that can buy that. I know you know the impact you have, but do you really know the impact that you have? Courage to know that you can be better. Courage to dig deep and realize this was always in you, but you let other people tell you that it wasn't in you. Courage to just be good at and know that you're good at it, and the courage to have the interpersonal relationships that are fantastic.
That's why this work matters. That you take somebody who you think is just sitting up front, but this is a person with hopes and dreams and challenges and pains, and we tap into what makes them the best of who they are. Getting them to understand why they should show up every day. Is like we could tell people to show up every day and just, hey, come work your butt off and here's your income. But if we can give someone a why, if we can empower them, if we can impact them, and by the way, I'm also talking to you as a doctor. I can't tell you how many doctors have come to me and they don't have a why. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They don't have a purpose. They're just going through the motions. Have you ever felt like you were just going through the motions? And maybe you're in the car right now and you're just driving and you're going through the motions. You got your, person in front of you who needs to pick up the pace, and you grab your Starbucks or whatever it is, but you don't know why. You're a little bit lost. Why are you doing what you're doing every day? And what's the point? And what's the impact? And so tapping into that is what this retreat's about. And identity is what the clip is about that we're about to show you. And it's really tapping into this idea that all humans have an identity. We all have an identity, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's impacted by our surroundings, by our belief system, whether they're limited or growth, by our peer groups, by our parents, by social media. And so we believe in this idea of who we are. And leaders believe in who they are. And here's the challenge. The challenge is to go from one identity to the next identity. So no matter who you are, you have to get to the next identity if you want to grow. But the challenge with that is you have to be good at quitting, because you have to quit friends. You have to quit limiting beliefs. You have to quit maybe behaviors. You have to quit. And it's hard work. And so people don't want to do that. They don't want to feel like they're abandoning their friends. They don't want to seem like they're trying to be superior. Maybe they feel they're fundamentally flawed and so that they don't feel like they deserve it. Whatever those are, and those are some of the beliefs that many of you right now listening have. You have these limited beliefs or these ceilings, and what they do is every time we go what I call them upper limit problems, and every time you start to increase to the new identity, you push yourself back down again. And so in this clip, what I'm going to do is talk about identity. And I'm going to talk about building an identity of leadership and what does a leadership identity look like and how can that impact your life? How can it impact your wealth? How can it impact your future, your legacy, your team, and everything else? So take a listen, enjoy, get something from this. Grab a pen, grab a paper, grab a note, grab something from this that you can take, you can put into place, and you can have an impact changing your own identity and getting your own self to the next place.
Identity and leadership is so powerful. I've spent the last 6 months really hanging around this idea of identity, and I've really done a lot of research on it. And it started a few years ago because what I was thinking about was what makes the difference between somebody who becomes absolutely successful, somebody who takes on all these concepts, who puts them in place, and then the person who doesn't and they struggle. And a lot of it that I find is just identity. The identity that the person has actually holds them back from getting to where they want to be, the person that they want to be. And we all have these identities. There's people that have identities around football teams. Do we have any Georgia Bulldog fans in here? I thought there was like 4. I did that intentionally because I knew there wasn't a lot of them. It's the first time in Georgia I got to do that. All right, Big Blue, any Big Blue? Vols? Go Vols. All right, we got 2. Who else we got here? We got any like what Texas? So the Longhorns, right? Hook 'em horns, right? Buckeyes. I wasn't going to go Buckeyes. Brian, wherever you're at, I'm not going Buckeyes. Anyone drive a Harley? Anyone a biker in here? Anyone like bikes? Hygienists? Doctors? All right, doctors, come on. Doctors? Admin? All right, that's good. I just got to get an award like they did yesterday, right? Assistant, I was going there. Don't wait. No, I was coming. Give me a second. All right. Assistants? Okay, so we identify, obviously, as a group of people. We all have this cool thing called an identity. We see ourselves a certain way. It actually changes the way we wake up in the morning. It changes what we do. If you're an athlete, if you see yourself as an athlete, you go to the gym every single day because you see yourself as an athlete. If you see yourself as a vegan, if you see yourself as a Harley, a biker, a bulldog, whatever it is, there's an identity that you take on, and believe it or not, leaders do the same thing. That actually leadership is an identity. It's an identity to be a leader. Because if I ask you in this room right now, and you do not answer out loud, please, whatever you do, don't answer out loud. But are you a leader? Don't answer that. And I will tell you that there are people in this room right now who went, yes, I'm a leader. And then there's people in the room who are like, maybe not. Maybe I'm not. And so leadership is actually an identity. It's an identity that you take on. You own that identity. And when we own that identity as a leader, then we act a certain way. Then our behaviors change. The way we do things actually change. We can't do the same things as somebody else. I was talking about this when I was kind of putting some of these slides together. I'll tell you, last year at the Christmas party, so we had an amazing Christmas party at Tower. And then we went out after, like as soon as we got done, we rented a restaurant. Everyone had a great time, spouses, everybody came out. And then afterwards, it was over at the Battery, and the Battery has some nightlife. And so we all went out afterwards. We get over there, and then it was about 12 o'clock. And Rachel looked at me, and she was like, you know we can't stay, right? And I was like, I know. And what my point was is that everybody was waiting for the boss to what? Leave. They were like, would he leave already? Would he just go so we can have some fun? And I thought I was like, hey guys, and it was like, oh. It's like the day you realize you're old or something, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to go now. But that's leadership identity, right? Understanding that, yeah, because as the leader, right, ultimately speaking, I'm going to make sure I act a certain way, of course. And it's the people in, right, my ultimately mentorship, they're going to act a certain way when I'm around because they understand what my expectations are as a leader. And my expectations are high. And so that's really important because as you heard yesterday, I don't ever turn this off. I'm like this all the time. I know it sounds annoying, but I really am like this all the time. Because I don't believe that you ultimately change your identity when you get off stage. That doesn't make sense, does it? Like imagine if I was up here and told you all this stuff, and then I got off stage and I just was back there cussing or whatever. I heard an analogy one time that said, hey, look, imagine if you were at Disney and all of a sudden, like, you walked behind the scenes and you saw Cinderella, like, freaking kids, right? Could you imagine? It would change your whole view of Disney. Because that princess has got an identity. Agreed? Leaders have an identity. That's the cool part, is that you actually take on an identity as a leader. And we all have an identity. We all look at ourselves a certain way. We all judge ourselves a certain way. We look at ourselves. We're constantly making decisions about what we do. The people we spend time with, all of those things are ultimately encompassed in our identity. So intentional leaders then have to be intentional about their identity. If you're going to be an intentional leader, then you have to say, man, I really got to think about this. So when I was in the military, I promoted to E5 in about 2.5 years. And those around me took about 8 years to do the same thing. And the reason why is because they meritoriously promoted me. So the captain of the ship, of an aircraft carrier, basically promoted me to E5 and said, hey, this guy's got tremendous leadership potential. We want to promote him. And actually it was ultimately all the chiefs, those of you who know the Navy, got together and voted me to be meritoriously promoted. And so it was a big deal, but it was because every single day that I ultimately took on that identity. I want to go back to this photo again. So what you don't know about that photo is that gentleman, that young gentleman right there, had that pin said GW Spirit. I was on George Washington, and every day I wore that pin proud. And I'd walk in every day, and it's not in that one, but I used to dunk my they called them dungarees back in the day. Okay, now they wear camis. But we used to dunk them in liquid starch because every day I wanted to walk in as a leader. And I didn't talk like the people who ultimately speaking didn't promote. And I didn't act like them. And I didn't go out all night drinking. I was really dedicated to growth and success in my unit, my peers. And I changed a culture, which I shared with you last year. Identity is ultimately something we take on and we can never take it off. It's a hat that never, ever, ever goes away. We can't ultimately hang out with certain friends and say, well, in these friends, I act like a leader, and then when I go home, I act like somebody else. There isn't two characters. There's one character. If you're true to yourself, there's only one of you. I think it would be taxing to fake who you are all day anyhow. So then we have to understand that as we become better, as we take all this material, this 2 days, and we put it in our lives, then we have to think about that for a minute and say, oh my gosh, well, if that's true, then ultimately speaking, I have to create a new identity. Everyone in this room, I don't care where you are or how successful or unsuccessful you feel, you still have to continue to transform your identity. I was talking to Dr. Mosing this morning. We were having a conversation, and Dr. Cochran, and what we were talking about was the idea of there's no way you can do and change everything in 2 days. It can't happen. But if you stay consistent over time, you eventually start to integrate these concepts with your life. as Rivertown Dental has done. And when you start doing this over and over and over, year after year after year, you start to think different, you act different, you speak different. Everything's different because you've taken on a new identity, and you don't even know you took on a new identity. You weren't trying to, you didn't call it that, but what's happened is your subconscious started to change, and the way you looked at a problem was different, and you quit looking at people who said, it's only what? It's not personal, it's just business, right? We heard that yesterday. We don't listen to those people because when somebody says it's not personal, it's just business, you go, man, that's the mob, man. Who taught you that? Because it's all personal. And even our team, I was sitting down with our team recently and I said, just so you know, any business planning we do, any financial planning we do, any P&L we do, any leadership training we do, it's all personal. It's all personal. Everyone's in this room right now for personal reasons. Now, some of you were told you're going to get on a plane and go to Atlanta. But it's all personal. Everything's personal. You say, well, they just want me to become better at my job. No, they don't. They want you to become a better person. This is about changing your identity. And you have to constantly change your identity. Now, it's difficult to become a great leader. If it was easy to become a great leader, then we would have great leadership everywhere. Here's a great question for you. Just think about this. How many great leaders do you know? Just sit with that. How many of you thought of 50 just like that? Pretty hard, isn't it? See, great leadership isn't something we come by every day. It's actually so unique. And in businesses, we can see great leadership. We can see when people do it the exact same way as everybody else. There's too much commoditization within the dental market. We literally watched what everybody else was doing, and we just repeat the same bad things over and over again. And so what happens is we looked around everyone else. We said, hey, look, this is how you're supposed to treat patients. This is how you're supposed to greet them. This is how you walk them out. And we just did the exact same thing. In fact, about a year ago, I had a lawyer in one of my foundations, and I asked him, I said, can you describe every dental office in the room? And he did. And they laughed. Even your leadership is commoditized. You learned how to lead by watching other people. Because leadership is hard, and it's difficult. And it's not always the pump you up. And we talked about this last year, but it's not always the pump up. And this is the mistake, is people think that it's about inspiration, that leadership is inspiring. And yes, it's true that leadership inspires. Absolutely true that leadership inspires. And absolutely true that leadership gives us a why. But leadership also deals with the difficult conversations. When it hurts, when it's painful. Leadership does that too. When the patient's mad, leadership does that too. When the person quits, by the way, I heard this recently and I love it. Nobody gets fired more than the owner of a business. No one gets fired more than the owner of a business. And I'm going to tell you right now, team members, if you're in the room, if you don't realize this, when somebody walks out that door, when you own that business, it frickin' hurts. It hurts when you put your heart and your blood and your soul into somebody and they walk out. Leadership's hard. It's difficult. And you got to look at the rest of the team and you got to motivate them and tell them it's all going to be okay. And sometimes you want to go home and you realize at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by the way, business owners, you know what that feels like at 2 o'clock in the morning, don't you? You don't have to raise your hand. But you know what it feels like. Becoming a great leader is difficult and it's challenging. And it's not always the pump you up. It's not always the inspiration. It's not always the feel good. Sometimes it's the hard day. It's the difficult day. It's the low profitability. It's the cash flow issue. It's the upset patient. It's the person who walked out the door. And you still got to show up and lead everyone every single day and still put your hat on every single day and be the best of the best. And nobody gives you credit for being the best of the best. But it's your identity. And when it's our identity, we walk in every single day and we just carry ourselves that way. And we do it every single day. The challenge with leadership is there is a lack of resources. There's a lack of resources. Right now, if I said, how many dental leadership events are there right now going on in the United States? Best I can tell, 1. There's a lack of ultimately concentration around this. There's a lack of resources around becoming a great leader. There's a lack of focus. As I talked about yesterday, I said, hey, listen, the science of a business is real easy. If I can count, I can change it, right? Anytime I can count something, the science, it makes it real easy. And this is, by the way, not just dental. This is all industries. What we do is we look at the P&L. We let the CFOs, we let the number crunchers ultimately tell us how to run a business. And ultimately, that's not what actually grows a business. So we don't focus on leadership because we don't know how to quantify it. How do you quantify if someone's a great leader? If you figure it out, let me know. It's tough. How do you quantify the results of great leadership? We know it's true that with great leadership, it actually works, that actually we get results, that it keeps retention, it keeps people motivated, it changes lives, but it's hard to quantify that. It's hard to measure it. So there's a lack of focus around it. So we don't focus on it because we don't know how to coach it, how to teach it. What do I do next? How do I make someone a great leader? Hell, I'm trying to figure it out myself. We don't know how it contributes to the bottom line, so we were like, hey, I don't even understand. They're trying to get to this academy thing. I don't even know. I mean, does it get filled to the bottom line? How do I quantify that? All organizations, your organization in this room, and my organization, by the way, all organizations. Because, by the way, sitting here, I'm in the same boat as you. You just don't know that. I got to deal with the same challenges as you. I got to do the same things as you. I got to grow just like you. I got to get better just like you. One of the reasons I'm telling it to you is so I can hear it again. Sometimes we need to hear it again, don't we? Yeah. So there's a ceiling. All organizations have a ceiling. All organizations have a ceiling. All of them. Your organization has a ceiling. It is capped by its leadership, by its potential. You guys ever have that person in your office? Hopefully that person's not here, but that you don't want to sit any new team members next to? Just give me like a woo. That was weak. No, I'm just kidding. But y'all know what I'm talking about, right? The person you're like, don't put them next to Susie. By the way, Susie's the name that I use always, so if you're a Susie in the room, please don't take offense to that. It's my go-to, all right? But all organizations are capped by your leadership potential. We talked about this yesterday, that there's a ceiling. So who you are today, whoever you are in this room, I don't care if it's the first, by the way, if it is the first week, great first week. But if it's your first week or you've been there for 30 years, what has gotten you here won't get you there. What has gotten you this far will not get you into the future. And the reason why is we all have to continue to get better. We all have to get better every single day. Because here's how organizations work. The job of the owner is to continue to grow the organization in an upward trend. When the organization grows, ultimately they have to grow faster than their best leaders. They have to grow faster than everyone within inside the organization. Because at any point where ultimately inside the practice, the people grow faster than the organization, greatness leaves. So it's a task as a business owner to grow faster than your people. But then as someone who works inside the organization, maybe you're an entrepreneur inside the organization, maybe you're head of something, or maybe you just got here. Ultimately, your job is also to grow. Your job is to grow every single day because that train's moving, especially if you're a tower. I'm telling you right now, we're going to continue to grow and build and create, and you got to keep growing inside of this, which means you have to change your identity, which means the things you did today, even if you feel successful, even if you walk in here and you say, hey, I'm confident, Eric, I feel great, I feel good about who I am and what I do, it won't get you there. It won't. There is not a person in this room who does not need to continue to grow their leadership and their leadership potential, including myself. Every single one of us has to continue to grow and push ourselves every single day. Because here's the deal. Top achievers have the ability to rapidly accept a new identity. I'd write that one down. Go back and give yourself a little quest. Top achievers have the ability to rapidly accept a new identity. They know that ultimately speaking, I've got to get really, really good at changing. I've got to get really, really good at accepting a new way of being. But there's consequences to accepting a new way of being. We're going to talk about those consequences, why it's so difficult to accept a new identity. But understand in this room, if it's an income you're chasing, if it's a quality of life, if it's more time with your family, whatever it ends up being, the only way you get there is actually accepting a new identity. You actually have to change to become someone you're not today. In fact, one of the reasons, if you think about it, you're taking notes. How many note takers in the room? All right. I'm about to make everyone do jumping jacks. How many note takers in the room? All right, much better. All right. One of the reasons you take notes, just so you know, is so that you can go back with these notes, it gets into your mindset, and it changes your behaviors, right or wrong. You're taking these things down, so you're like, hey, look, I want to take this out, and I want to change it. And I heard yesterday afternoon the core 5, and I want to put that in place, and I heard this, and I heard that, and I want to take this, and I want it to change my mindset, my behaviors, when I wake up, when I go to bed, what do I do, what do I eat, what do I drink, whatever it ends up being, maybe it's your faith, whatever it is, you're ultimately changing your identity. That's what you're trying to do. Is you're saying, hey, if I incorporate these new behaviors, I'm actually going to see myself different. When I was a sailor, I saw myself in one identity. I had to change that identity. I loved the frickin' Navy. I loved it. I'm not going to lie to you. I loved it. I remember actually Carson and I, believe it or not, we were both at the same rate. I walked on, the day I got on the aircraft carrier, I just remember, he was like, do you remember your first day? And I did. I remember walking up in Norfolk, Virginia, and I see an aircraft carrier. And I'm just like, whoa. And I walk on this thing. And by the way, in the morning time, just so you guys know, in the morning before they used to fire up the jets. So I remember, so they started flight operations at 9 a.m. I used to run on the aircraft carrier with a big American flag over me. And I was like, I'm telling you right now, I don't have any tattoos, but I should have got one. And I would run, and every morning I'd just be like, this is amazing. On an aircraft carrier in the ocean, right? And it was just unbelievable to be on an aircraft carrier. Just one of the greatest experiences of my life. But I own that identity. I starch my shirts. I walked a certain way. My boots, I can shine, I'm telling you right now. The reason I didn't shine these to glass is because I'd blind you all. But that was my identity. Then I get out, I go to university, it's a new identity, right? You get married, it's a new identity. Have kids, it's a new identity. Start a career, new identity. Start a business, new identity. Right? There's identities that we're shifting all the time. And so every time we shift, we ultimately push ourselves to discomfort and uncertainty. And let me tell you how this stuff catches on. As I was talking to Julie Mosing this morning, Dr. Mosing said to me, hey, look, we tell our team all the time, you're going to have to push yourself to discomfort and uncertainty. I was like, man, this stuff is good. It sticks. If you listen to this and let it feed you, ultimately you'll lead that way. You'll let your team know, hey, if you're going to change your identity, if you're going to become the better version of yourself, you better get good at being uncomfortable. You better get really good at being uncomfortable. How many of you love to be uncomfortable? One. Being uncomfortable kind of sucks. It does. It doesn't feel good. And here's the other thing. Uncertainty is even worse. I don't even know if this is going to work. Not only am I uncomfortable, but I'm uncertain if this is even going to work. So I got all this stuff. I left this leadership retreat. I got all my stuff right here. I'm ready to go. And I don't even know if I implement all this, if it's going to give me a future that's certain. So I'm going to change all my behaviors. I'm going to change everything I'm doing. I'm going to change my lifestyle. I'm going to change when I wake up. I'm going to change how I talk to my spouse. I'm going to change all this, and I don't even know if it's going to work. Why do you think people quit? when we accept a new identity, we don't even know if it's going to work. That's the challenge. We actually have to push ourselves with no guarantee of results. Now, we look at other people, we've watched what they do, and we go, well, I want to be like them. And they did this, so maybe if I follow in their footsteps, it'll work like this. But here's what we know, as soon as, and here's the craziest part. So you put all this stuff in place, you start to change your life. You wake up at a different time. You do jumping jacks at night, whatever you do, journal, get strong with your faith, get strong with your family, with your spouse, all that stuff, and you get amazing. You wake up and it's like a year from now and you're like, my freaking life is awesome and it's the best. I have the best relationship with my spouse and my kids and my team, and I feel good and I feel healthy, and guess what I got to do? Change again. Oh, yeah. Leadership's hard. That's why people get tired. So think about that for a second. When I say the word and the phrase, get comfortable at getting uncomfortable, what I mean is if you want to be great, you got to constantly change your identity. You got to constantly go back. And when you get to the place where you start to get comfortable, when you're like, man, I got this down pat, you better change again. Because if not, you just get into maturity and eventually decline. So that means you got to reinvent. You got to reinvent. You got to reinvent. You got to reinvent. You got to reinvent, which means constantly losing people in your life, constantly changing your behaviors, constantly being told you're never going to make it, never going to hit your goals, never going to win. All those things that ultimately people say about you, because first people hate and then they admire, right? So as first as you start doing something, people are going to beat you down. You shouldn't do that. It's not going to work. And you never get perfect at leadership, ever. It's always a process. Look, they said it'd be great at anything. I said yesterday, it's 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours. Think about this for a second. Don't answer it. How many hours have you put into being a leader? Studying leadership. How many books have you read on leadership? Now, by the way, you get credit for 16 hours. All right? You got leadership CE for being here. All right? So you can count 16. So just take 10,000. You can at least minus 16 from that. All right? But think about that for a second. Why is this stuff hard? We don't put enough time and energy into it. It's hard to be a leader. And we don't even put the time and energy and focus into it anyhow. If it takes 10,000 hours to become a great leader, think about how many hours you've really put in to be a leader. Because think about your life and think about if you put that 30 hours I talked about yesterday, and you said, gosh, 30 hours over a decade, it's 2 years. 2 years of your life. If you spent in the next decade 2 years of your life becoming a phenomenal leader and working on yourself and your craft and your health and your faith and your relationships, what would it do for your life in the next decade? Well, see, that's the pump-up side. That's the feel-good side. But if it was that easy, everybody would do it. It's more challenging. Anyone like to sleep in on Sunday? On Monday? Fridays, right? It's hard to do. Brian, so you don't know, Brian comes up here, and I don't even know, I don't know if he hears this or not. Brian looks pretty fit, right? I mean, you can make him up, you can use cardboard and make him look, right? Flat bill. We went to dinner last night, and I'm telling you right now, went to Stony River, had a great dinner. And, you know, did anyone go to Stony River? Anybody? Did you have any of those rolls? Okay, they're donuts. They're freaking donuts. And I ate a lot of them, I'm not going to lie. And we got ordered appetizers, and then they didn't bring around the rolls. And I finally said to the waiter, I was like, hey, what about the rolls, man? And he said, well, I thought with all the appetizers, you wouldn't want the rolls. I was like, no, man, bring the rolls. Bring the rolls. They're donuts. Brian said, well, this is my cheat meal. So it's kind of cool. We go back. Now, after this amazing meal, we get back to the hotel, and what do you think Brian says to the team, says to all of us? Hey, guys, I'm going to head out to the gym. 10 p.m. Hey, I'm heading out to the gym, guys. I'm like, man, I ate those donuts too. Are you willing to go to the gym at 10 p.m.? Brian is. Leadership isn't easy. Leadership is difficult. It's easy to get on stage and talk about these things. It's much harder to do them, to put them in place. We know it. I was watching a story about the Dream Team back in 2007, and they talked about Kobe Bryant, and it's called the Redeem Team. I believe it's on Netflix. It's called the Redeem Team, and the USA had lost gold. I mean, when the USA, we were the basketball giants of the world, and all of a sudden we got beat. And we lost gold. And it was like, the USA can't lose gold at basketball. And they're trying to get this. They got LeBron in when he was young, and they got this team together, and they're still struggling. And then they bring this guy called Kobe Bryant in. The guys go out all night partying. They get back to the hotel. Who do you think greets them in the lobby? Kobe Bryant. So what are you doing? He said, I'm going to work out. He was like, you guys coming with me? And he got them to go to the gym after being up all night, and they were like, they started watching Kobe's leadership. They started watching what Kobe did. They wanted to know how he won all those championships. And Kobe led them. He led that entire team. If you'll go back and watch the special, it's a great special on leadership, and watch what Kobe Bryant did. And watch what Coach K did. And you'll learn about leadership in that video, that they were willing to make hard decisions to get back to gold. And how many times they lost over and over and over and over again. They had to change everything they were doing as a team. They had to change their schematics. They had to change their play. They had to change their everything to get great. These were the best basketball players in the world, and they got their butts kicked. They had to get comfortable becoming uncomfortable. They brought in a college coach to ultimately lead the team because of his military background. Sometimes you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Great leaders are always evolving, always evolving, always evolving. So your identity you have for yourself today is the story. It's the narrative that you have for yourself. The standards or commitments that you hold for yourself. What do you hold yourself to? Do you give in? Do you go with the crowd? Do you do what everybody else is doing? Do you not want to create any kind of chaos? Do you want everyone to like you? I was having a conversation recently, and I was saying ultimately a very tough decision that I had to make at Tower. And ultimately what a thing I said at the time the team ultimately pushed back against me, and now the team is really happy I made that decision. And he said, why did you make that? Actually, it was Ken last night. He said, why did you make that decision? Because I said, here's the thing. I knew what was best for the company. I knew what was best for the team. And if you want to make everybody happy, go sell ice cream. What is your identity? Who do you identify as? How do you see yourself? When you look in the mirror every morning, who do you see in that mirror? Who you see in the mirror is only ultimately a product of the decisions you've made up to this point. Who you see in the mirror has nothing to do with your circumstances. Nothing to do with your circumstances. That person in the mirror looking back at you is a product of the decisions you've made, good or bad. They've been compounding for a period of time. And whatever you look at, ultimately speaking, that person looking back at you is just a product of the decisions you made. But here's the cool news. You can change the decisions you make every single day as a leader. It starts every single day. Each one of you has a story or narrative, what you think you can accomplish, what you can do, and as a leader and how you can impact people. But great leaders push their personal limits. They go back and they say, how do I get better today? Forget about tomorrow. People underestimate what they can do in a decade and overestimate what they can do in a year. In a decade, you can absolutely transform your life. You can absolutely change everything about your circumstances, your life. You can lead people in a way you never thought you could lead people. And you might say, well, okay, that's great for the teams. No, I'm talking to the doctors too. You can change your life. You can transform your life. You can change those around you. I like to watch, ultimately speaking, what great leadership can do for a business as far as standards, as far as communication, as far as impact. You're here today ultimately because an identity that your doctor saw for your office. Great leaders push themselves. So what is your current identity? What is your current identity? I want you to write down right now. And here's what we're going to take. We're just going to take a few moments, because if I don't do this now, you probably won't do it. Now, if you're a private person, you can put your arm like this if you want to. But I want you to just take a minute, and I want you to just write down some adjectives about your current identity. And this is for you. It's not for anybody else. It's not for me. Just write down some adjectives that would describe your current, how you see yourself. When you see yourself, you can put down anything you want. You can put down hygienist. You can put down mother, faith leader, right? Entrepreneur, intrapreneur, whatever it ends up being. Confident, non-confident, introvert, extrovert. Some of you identify as introvert. Sometimes you identify as an extrovert. How do you identify? By the way, there's no way you can finish this exercise in the time I'm giving you. I'm just getting you started. Now I want you to write down your future identity. I want you to write down a future identity. I want you to take a minute and I want you to write down a future identity. Who are you in the future? Who's the next version of you? What does that person look like? What do they talk like? Who do they spend time with? What makes you great? You're all capable of greatness, every single one of you. Write down your future identity.
I hope you enjoyed that clip. Hope you got something from it. Remember, the guy at 1 million, right, is different than the guy at 10 million, and different than the guy at 20 million, and different than the person at 100 million. Leaders understand to transform their lives and to transform their futures, they have to assume a new identity. They have to get good and even great at quitting, which is why most people never become tremendously successful. So I hope you grabbed some good information. Hope you grabbed some great information. Hope you took some action items, some things to think about, some things to enjoy. Go back, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you share this podcast. Like if you thought this was great and you're like, gosh, I got some great stuff from this. Hey, send it to a friend. I mean, that's what impact is. I think sometimes people think impact is feeding the homeless all the time. Sometimes the impact can just be sending a podcast and saying, hey, check this out. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.